Ambassador Marcus Cole stood in the center of the Grand Assembly Hall on Zentara Prime. The massive dome stretched above him, filled with floating platforms where alien delegates sat in their various breathing atmospheres. Some floated in water-filled spheres, others perched on crystal formations that hummed with energy. The humans looked small and plain compared to the colorful array of galactic species around them. Marcus straightened his simple black diplomatic uniform and activated the holographic projector. Admiral Lisa Grant stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back in military fashion. She had insisted on coming herself, saying the data was too important to trust junior officers. The first image appeared in the air above them. It showed star charts of the galaxy's outer rim, with dozens of red markers indicating systems that had gone dark in recent months. A low murmur rippled through the assembly as delegates recognized some of the locations. "Honored representatives," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. "The Terran Federation brings urgent news of a threat approaching our galaxy. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive objects moving through the void between galaxies." A chittering laugh came from the Zephyrian section. Chancellor Vexkala's insect-like form clicked its mandibles together in amusement. "Humans and their wild stories," the translator rendered his speech. "Every month you bring us new fears about shadows in space." Admiral Grant stepped forward and changed the holographic display. Now it showed detailed scans of biomechanical structures, each one larger than most starships. The readings indicated life signs, but unlike anything in the galactic database. "These are not shadows," Lisa said firmly. Captain John Rodriguez of the exploration vessel Terra Nova encountered these entities 6 weeks ago. They consumed 3 entire star systems while the ship watched from a safe distance. The crystalline delegate from the consortium, a being that looked like living glass, pulsed with soft light as it spoke. Convenient that only humans have seen these supposed monsters. How do we know this is not another attempt to gain importance in galactic affairs? Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but kept his voice level. "We are sharing this information freely because the threat affects everyone. These entities appear to consume all matter in their path, leaving nothing behind but empty space." He gestured to Lisa, who activated another set of recordings. The hologram showed Captain Rodriguez's ship, the Terra Nova, fleeing as massive shapes moved through space behind them. The biomechanical entities were barely visible, but their effect was clear. Planets simply vanished, their mass apparently absorbed by the creatures. Chief Science Officer Karen Webb had worked for weeks to clean up the sensor data. Even with her best efforts, the images were unclear and hard to understand. But Engineer Paul Harrison had confirmed the energy readings. Whatever these things were, they operated on a scale that dwarfed known technology. "The patterns suggest they are moving toward the galactic core," Marcus continued. "At their current speed, they will reach the outer colonies within 18 months. The inner systems will follow soon after." The assembly erupted in multiple conversations as delegates spoke in their native languages. The Velthian representative, Ambassador Cathara, remained silent. Her people had been allies with Earth for decades, but even she seemed skeptical. Chancellor Vex Kala rose from his platform, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of dismissal. "The humans seek to frighten us with stories of invisible monsters. They have been in space for barely 2 centuries. We have maintained galactic peace for millennia. Who are they to lecture us about threats?" Nods and agreements came from across the hall. The Korathian mining guild delegate struck his hammer against a metal plate, the traditional sign of rejection. The Trade Federation representatives whispered among themselves, clearly discussing the economic implications rather than the actual threat. Admiral Grant's face reddened, but she kept her military bearing. "We are not seeking to frighten anyone. We are trying to save lives. The Terra Nova barely escaped. Captain Rodriguez lost 2 crew members when they stayed too long trying to gather data. Convenient martyrs, came a voice from the hegemony. Section. Dead humans cannot contradict your story. Marcus realized they were losing the room. The delegates had already made up their minds before the presentation began. To them, humanity was still the newcomer species, the primitives who had stumbled into faster-than-light travel through luck rather than skill. We have prepared defense. Plans, Marcus said, desperation creeping into his voice. Combined fleet movements, evacuation protocols for threatened worlds, research initiatives to develop new weapons. But we need galactic cooperation. The laughter started with the Zephyrians and spread throughout the hall. Even the normally dignified crystalline consortium pulsed with colors that their translators rendered as amusement. Chancellor Vexcala's voice cut through the noise. The Galactic Empire has maintained order for 5,000 years. We will not be stampeded into panic by a frightened child species that sees monsters in every shadow. He gestured with one of his upper arms, and the assembly's attention focused on him. The Empire finds that the Terran Federation has engaged in fear-mongering behavior designed to disrupt galactic stability. Trade restrictions will be imposed on human space effective immediately. All Terran vessels are ordered to withdraw beyond the outer colonial boundaries. Marcus felt the words hit him like physical blows. You are making a terrible mistake. When these entities arrive, you will need every ship, every resource working together. When your imaginary monsters arrive, Chancellor Vexcala replied, the Empire will deal with them as we have dealt with every threat for millennia, without the hysteria of primitive species. Admiral Grant stepped closer to Marcus and spoke. Quietly, we need to leave. Security forces are moving toward our platform. Marcus looked around the hall one last time. Some delegates were already floating away, their platforms carrying them toward the exits. Others remained to watch the humans' departure, their alien expressions unreadable but clearly dismissive as they walked toward the exit. Marcus activated his personal communicator. The message he sent was brief and direct, transmitted to Earth. On the fastest available channel, they refused to listen. Prepare for isolation protocols. At the exit, Marcus turned back to the assembly hall. His voice carried clearly as he spoke his final words to the Galactic Empire. We tried to warn you. We offered our help freely. Remember that when they come. Remember that we tried to save you all. The great doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. Admiral Grant looked at Marcus as they walked toward their ship. What now? Marcus straightened his shoulders and looked out at the alien city sprawling below them. Ships from dozens of species filled the sky, all going about their normal business as if nothing had changed. Now we go home, he said quietly. And we prepare to defend ourselves, because when those things arrive, we will be alone. The transport pad carried them up to their ship, the diplomatic vessel New York. As they lifted off from Zentara Prime, Marcus watched the beautiful alien world fall away. Below them, he wondered if he would ever see it again, or if it would be consumed like the rim worlds Captain Rodriguez had witnessed. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks through normal space lanes, 3 weeks to plan for the isolation that was coming, 3 weeks to prepare for a galaxy that had chosen pride over survival. Behind them, the Galactic Empire continued its ancient routines, secure in its power and dismissive of the warnings they had just rejected. The delegates returned to their homeworlds, confident that they had made the right choice. None of them noticed the first reports coming in from the rim territories, where entire systems had begun going dark. Captain Nancy Price gripped the command chair of the merchant vessel Pacific Explorer as emergency alarms blared throughout the ship. Through the main viewport, she could see something that would haunt her dreams forever. The planet Korath 7, A thriving mining world with 12 billion inhabitants was being stripped apart piece by piece. The creatures doing it defied description. They looked like living ships, but each one was the size of a small moon. Their surfaces rippled with organic patterns that pulsed with sickly light. Long tentacle-like appendages reached down to the planet's surface, drawing up streams of matter that disappeared into gaping mouths lined with what looked like metallic teeth. "Captain, we need to leave now," her navigation officer, Jake Murphy, called from his station. "Those things haven't noticed us yet, but our sensors are going crazy just being this close." Nancy wanted to help somehow, but the Pacific Explorer was just a cargo hauler. They had no weapons, no shields strong enough to matter. All around the dying planet, she could see the wreckage of ships that had tried to fight. The Korathian defense fleet had been one of the strongest in this sector. Now their ships floated as twisted metal, slowly being drawn into the creature's feeding process. "Set course for the nearest jump point," Nancy ordered. "Maximum speed. Send out a distress signal on all frequencies." As the Pacific Explorer fled the system, Nancy looked back one more time. The planet was half gone now, its core exposed and glowing. The biomechanical entities fed with mechanical efficiency, like some cosmic harvesting machine. She thought about the billions of lives that had just ended and felt sick. The jump to hyperspace felt like salvation, but Nancy knew it was temporary. If these things could destroy Korath 7 so easily, nowhere in the galaxy was truly safe. 3 days later, Admiral Vexstar of the Imperial Navy stood in the command center of the battle station. Eternal glory. Reports flooded in from across the Rim territories. 17 systems had gone completely dark. Another dozen were reporting massive objects approaching through deep space. Vexstar was a veteran of 50 campaigns, but he had never faced anything like this. His species, the proud Zelkari, had ruled their section of space for 3,000 years. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming firepower and superior technology. It had never failed them before. "Sir, the 3rd Battle Group reports contact with hostile entities in the Karen system," his aide reported. "They are engaging now." The holographic display showed the distant battle in real time. Admiral Vysis commanded 12 heavy cruisers and 40 support vessels, all top-of-the-line Imperial warships. They moved in perfect formation, executing maneuvers that had been practiced for centuries. The enemy appeared on the display as organic shapes that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. As Vexstar watched, the Imperial ships opened fire with their most powerful weapons. Plasma beams that could crack planets struck the biomechanical entities directly. Nothing happened. The creatures absorbed the energy like it was nothing more than sunlight. Then they began to move toward the Imperial fleet with frightening speed. As they got closer, the display showed details that made Vexstar's blood run cold. The entities were covered in what looked like armor, but it moved and flowed like living tissue. "Admiral Vysis is requesting reinforcements," the communications officer reported. "Her ships are taking heavy damage." On the display, one of the Imperial cruisers suddenly crumpled like paper. The biomechanical entity had done something to it, but the sensors couldn't detect what kind of weapon had been used. The ship simply collapsed in on itself and was drawn into the creature's body. "Send the 5th and 7th fleets to assist," Vexstar ordered, though he was beginning to suspect it wouldn't matter. He was right. Within 6 hours, all 3 Imperial battle groups had been destroyed. The biomechanical entities continued their advance toward the core worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other in a babel of alien languages. The translation systems couldn't keep up with the volume of panicked voices. Chancellor Vexkala tried to maintain order, but even his commanding presence seemed diminished. The reports were undeniable now. The human warnings had been correct. The entities were real, and they were consuming entire civilizations. "We need to coordinate our defenses," the Velthian representative insisted. "Combine all our fleets into a unified command structure. The Trade Federation's shipping lanes are already compromised," another delegate reported. "We're losing entire convoys." "What about the humans?" asked a small voice from the back of the chamber. It was the delegate from the Kepler Republic, a minor species that rarely spoke in council sessions. "They warned us about this. Maybe they have ideas for how to fight these things." The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered the human presentation 6 months ago. They remembered how they had laughed and dismissed the warnings as fear-mongering. Chancellor Vexkawa's mandibles clicked nervously. "The humans have been unresponsive to our communications. They appear to have withdrawn completely from galactic affairs." This was an understatement. Every attempt to contact Earth had been met with automated responses. The human embassy on Zentara Prime had been closed. Human ships had disappeared from trade routes and diplomatic missions. It was as if humanity had simply decided the galaxy no longer existed. "We drove them away," Ambassador Kethara said quietly. Her words carried clearly in the hushed chamber. "We treated them like children and ignored their warnings. Now they refuse to help us." Meanwhile, in the Sol system, General Alan Cooper reviewed the construction reports from his office on Luna Base. The Sol defense grid was ahead of schedule. Automated weapons platforms had been installed throughout the system, hidden in asteroids and disguised as mining equipment. Dr. Helen Murphy's research teams had made breakthrough after breakthrough. The biomechanical signatures that Captain Rodriguez had captured were yielding secrets. The entities used quantum manipulation to digest matter, but that same process created vulnerabilities that human weapons could exploit. "General, we're receiving another communication request from the Galactic Council," his aide reported. "They're offering full diplomatic immunity and technology sharing agreements." Alan looked out at Earth through his office window. The blue planet looked peaceful, but he knew that every major population center was now protected by defensive shields that hadn't existed a year ago. Orbital shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels with capabilities the galaxy had never seen. "Standard response," he said. "The Terran Federation is not accepting diplomatic communications at this time." His aide nodded and left. Alan returned his reports. The outer defense perimeter would be complete within 3 months. The inner system defenses were already operational. When the biomechanical entities finally reached human space, they would find something very different from the helpless prey they had consumed so far. On the edge of Terran space, automated monitoring stations tracked the approaching threat. The same deep space sensors that had first detected the entities now painted a detailed picture of their capabilities. Every scan, every measurement was transmitted back to Earth and analyzed. The creatures were heading for the galactic core, following the densest concentration of inhabited worlds. They would reach the major trade routes within weeks. The ancient civilizations that had dismissed humanity's warnings were about to face extinction. Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to Commodore, reviewed the tactical data from his new command ship. The Terra Nova had been replaced by the Terra Invincible, a vessel that incorporated every lesson learned from humanity's first encounter with the entities. "They're learning," he told his senior staff. "Each system they consume teaches them something new about galactic technology. By the time they reach US, they'll be even more dangerous." His new science officer, Dr. Amy Watson, nodded agreement. "But we're learning too. Every scan, every report from the rim worlds gives us more data. We know how they think now, how they hunt." Outside the conference room windows, the lights of human space glittered like diamonds against the black. Colonies that had once been Frontier outposts were now fortress worlds. Trade ships had been converted to patrol vessels. The entire human sphere of influence had become a single, integrated defense network. The galaxy that had rejected Earth's friendship was about to discover what humanity looked like when it prepared for war. And this time, the warnings would come in the form of weapons fire. Field Marshal Zixon watched in horror as another star system died on his tactical display. The Ashen Empire's homeworld, a planet that had existed for over 4,000 years, simply vanished into the hungry maws of the biomechanical entities. 12 billion souls gone in less than 6 hours. His command ship, the Destroyer of Worlds, represented the combined might of what remained of galactic civilization. Around him floated vessels from every major species. The Crystalline Consortium had contributed their geometric warships that hummed with pure energy. The Trade Federation had converted their massive cargo haulers into weapons platforms. Even the mysterious Synthetic Collective had emerged from their hidden systems with ships that bent space around them. Marshal, our combined fleet numbers. Over 8,000 vessels. Admiral Theises reported from her position at the tactical station. The largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. Zixon nodded grimly. It should have been enough. Against any normal enemy, such a force could have conquered half the galaxy. But these entities were not normal enemies. They seemed to learn from every encounter, adapting their biomechanical forms to counter whatever weapons were used against them. Signal all ships, he ordered. Execute the Salvation Protocol. Full combined assault on the lead entity. The attack began with a coordinated barrage that lit up space itself. Plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter torpedoes, and weapons that existed only in theory, all fired at once. The energy release was visible from neighboring star systems. When the light faded, the biomechanical entity was completely unharmed. Its surface rippled with new patterns, as if it was analyzing and cataloging each type of weapon that had struck it. Then it began to move toward the galactic fleet with terrifying purpose. Meanwhile, at the edge of human space, Commander Steve Walsh stood on the bridge of the defense platform. Deep watch. His sensors showed a small group of the entities approaching. The Centauri system, apparently drawn by the industrial activity there. Contact confirmed, his sensor operator reported. 3 biomechanical entities, moving at standard approach speed. They appeared to be scouts. Steve had been waiting for this moment for months. The Centauri defense zone was humanity's first real test against the creatures that had consumed half the galaxy. Unlike the desperate last stands happening elsewhere, this battle had been planned down to the smallest detail. Activate the gravitational mines, he ordered. Begin Phase 1. Space. Around the approaching entities suddenly twisted. Hidden devices that had been placed months earlier came online, creating pockets of intense gravity that pulled the creatures off course. The entities seemed confused for the first time since their invasion began. Captain Beth Turner commanded. The Destroyer Squadron Hidden Strike. Her ships had been waiting in dimensional fold space, completely invisible to normal sensors. As the entities struggled against the gravitational fields, her squadron materialized directly behind them. All ships, fire on my mark, Beth commanded. Remember, hit and run. Don't stay in normal space for more than 30 seconds. The human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of trying to overpower the entity's adaptive defenses, they attacked the quantum foundations that held their biomechanical forms together. The weapons didn't destroy matter. They convinced it to stop existing in organized patterns. The first entity shuddered as sections of its hull simply ceased to be. For a moment, it tried to regenerate the damaged areas, but the quantum disruption spread like a virus through its structure. Within minutes, the massive creature was breaking apart at the molecular level. The other 2 entities immediately began to retreat. But Captain Roy Parker's patrol group was waiting for them. His ships appeared from fold space in perfect formation, weapons already charged and ready. "Light them up," Roy commanded. The second entity died even faster than the first. The third managed to send out what appeared to be a distress signal before Roy's weapons tore it apart. As the last pieces of biomechanical matter dissolved into basic atoms, the human ships vanished back into fold space. Steve Walsh reviewed the battle data with satisfaction. Total engagement time, 17 minutes. Human casualties, 0. Entity casualties, 100%. The weapons Dr. Murphy's teams had developed worked even better than predicted. The news of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy's emergency communication networks like wildfire. For the first time since the invasion began, someone had not just survived an encounter with the entities. They had won decisively. On board his flagship, Field Marshal Zixon received the report with disbelief. The humans destroyed 3 entities? Impossible. Our combined fleet couldn't even damage one. "The sensor recordings are clear, sir," his communications officer replied. "The human weapons appear to work on completely different principles than ours." Admiral Vices looked up from her tactical station. "We need to make contact with Earth. Immediately. If they have effective weapons, we must coordinate our efforts." Zixon activated the long-range communication array. The message he sent was brief and desperate. "Earth Command, this is Field Marshal Zixon of the Galactic Defense Force. We urgently request immediate military assistance and technology sharing. The fate of all galactic civilization is at stake." The response came back within hours. It was an automated message in perfect galactic standard language. "The Terran Federation acknowledges your communication. However, we do not recognize the authority of the organizations that rejected our previous diplomatic efforts. All requests for assistance are denied." The bridge fell silent. Even facing extinction, the humans were holding to their earlier dismissal. Meanwhile, refugee ships from across the galaxy began appearing at the borders of human space. Entire populations fleeing the advancing entities crowded into barely space-worthy vessels. Hoping to find sanctuary behind humanity's defensive lines, Captain Julie Ross commanded the border patrol ship New Angeles. Her job was to intercept refugees before they could enter Terran space. It was not a duty she enjoyed. "Refugee convoy approaching Sector 7, her sensor officer reported. "Approximately 50,000 Zephyrian civilians. They're requesting emergency asylum." Julie looked at the long-range scans. The Zephyrian ships were barely holding together. Some of them were civilian transports, never meant for deep space travel. She could see life support failures on several vessels. "Standard response," she said quietly. "Direct them to the nearest non-human system that still has defensive capabilities." "Ma'am, there aren't any," her communications officer replied. "Every system within jump range has either fallen or been evacuated." Julie closed her eyes for a moment. These were the same people who had laughed at humanity's warnings. Chancellor Vex Kala himself might be on one of those ships. But her orders were clear. "Broadcast the standard message," she ordered. "The Terran Federation cannot accept refugees at this time. We recommend they seek shelter elsewhere." As the refugee convoy changed course and limped away toward empty space, Julie wondered if this was what victory was supposed to feel like. On Earth, President Janet Mitchell reviewed the daily intelligence reports from her office in the rebuilt Geneva complex. The biomechanical entities were consuming systems faster now, as if they had learned to be more efficient. The galactic population was dropping by billions each day. "Madam President, we're receiving over 10,000 asylum requests per hour," her aide reported. "The refugee camps at our borders are growing larger every day." Janet looked out at the peaceful Swiss countryside. Lake Geneva sparkled in the afternoon sun, looking exactly as it had when humanity was just another minor species begging for recognition. "Maintain current policy," she said. "No entry without prior authorization. And authorization requires formal acknowledgement of Terran sovereignty over the systems we designate as protected zones." Her aide nodded and left. Janet returned to her. Reports. The entities would reach the inner systems within weeks. When they did, the galaxy would finally understand what they had lost when they rejected Earth's friendship. Outside her window, construction crews worked on the new orbital defense platforms. Humanity had tried to save the galaxy through cooperation. Now they would save themselves through strength. The rest of the galaxy would have to live with the consequences of their earlier choices, if they lived at all. Captain Dan Foster watched his deep space sensors with growing alarm. The biomechanical swarm approaching Sol system was unlike anything they had encountered before. Instead of the usual scout groups or hunting packs, this was a massive coordinated fleet led by something his computers could barely classify. "Sir, the lead entity is reading as moon-sized," his sensor operator reported from the monitoring station beyond hope. "It appears to be directing the movement of the entire swarm." Dan studied the readings. The Devourer Prime, as intelligence, had designated it, pulsed with energy patterns that seemed to coordinate hundreds of smaller entities. This was clearly the brain of the invasion force that had consumed most of the galaxy. "Send the alert to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them we're looking at approximately 800 biomechanical entities, led by what appears to be their central intelligence." The message reached Admiral Lisa Grant within minutes. She stood in the command center of the orbital fortress New Terra, built in the shadow of Earth's moon. Around her, holographic displays showed the approaching threat in perfect detail. "They're coming here because their scouts stopped reporting back," she told her staff. "They know something in this system can hurt them, and they're bringing everything. They have to crush it." General Alan Cooper joined the meeting via secure link from Luna Base. "Our fold space interdictors are in position. Once they enter the Kuiper Belt, they won't be able to retreat through dimensional space." "What about the galactic governments?" asked Captain Julie Ross, now promoted to fleet coordination. "They've been sending increasingly desperate messages." "Admiral." Grant pulled up the latest communications. Supreme Chancellor Mordek, of what remained of the Galactic Empire, had sent personal recordings begging for Earth's help. The Trade Federation had offered their entire treasury. Even the proud hegemony had formally surrendered to human authority in exchange for protection. "Foreign Secretary Linda Hayes has been clear," Grant replied. "We don't negotiate with governments that refused our original warnings. They made their choice 6 months ago." The battle preparations continued across the Sol system. Hidden weapons. Platforms powered up inside hollowed-out asteroids. The rings of Saturn became launch tubes for weapons that could crack planets. Even Jupiter's moons had been converted into fortress positions. Captain Emma Clark commanded the pursuit fleet stationed beyond Pluto. Her ships were the fastest in human space, designed to hunt down any entities that might try to escape. "Admiral, all pursuit squadrons report ready. Nothing that enters this system will leave alive." The Devourer swarm reached the edge of the Kuiper Belt exactly when human calculations predicted. The moment they crossed the invisible boundary, space itself seemed to change around them. The fold space interdictors activated, trapping the biomechanical entities in normal spacetime. Admiral Grant stood in the center of the Sol Defense Command, surrounded by tactical displays showing every weapon system in the solar system. "All stations, this is Admiral Grant. Today, we end the threat that has consumed our galaxy. All units, commence Operation Solar Storm." The battle began not with ships, but with the solar system itself. Weapons built into asteroids opened fire, first sending streams of quantum disruption energy toward the approaching swarm. The outer entities began dissolving immediately, their biomechanical forms unable to maintain cohesion against weapons designed specifically to counter their abilities. The Devourer Prime responded by sending out waves of smaller entities, trying to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer numbers. But Captain Beth Turner's dimensional assault squadrons were ready. Her ships phased in and out of reality, striking from angles that the entities couldn't predict or counter. Phase Squadron Alpha, target the command cluster around the Prime. Beth commanded. Don't let them coordinate their attack patterns. Her ships materialized inside the swarm itself, weapons already firing. The quantum disruption beams tore through the smaller entities like they were made of paper. Before the Devourer Prime could respond, the squadron vanished back into Fold Space. Commander Rick Davis coordinated the orbital bombardment platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt, targeting solutions locked on the Prime entity. All platforms. Report ready to fire. The asteroid belt lit up like a miniature sun as hundreds of concealed weapons fired simultaneously. The beams converged on the Devourer Prime from every direction, each one carrying enough energy to destroy a battleship. A massive entity's biomechanical armor began to crack and flow as it tried to adapt to the unprecedented assault. But the Devourer Prime was not defenseless. It began to pulse with deep red energy, and the smaller entities around it started combining together, forming larger and more complex shapes. Within minutes, the human forces faced dozens of moon-sized creatures instead of hundreds of smaller ones. They're adapting faster than our models predicted, Dr. Helen Murphy reported from her research station on Luna. The Prime is learning from our attacks in real time. Admiral Grant watched the tactical display with growing concern. The combined entities were pushing through the outer defenses, absorbing damage that should have destroyed them. Activate the inner system defense grid. All ships fall back to the Mars perimeter. The retreat was planned and orderly, but it looked like humanity was losing. Refugee monitoring stations throughout the galaxy picked up the signals and transmitted them to the surviving alien governments. For a brief moment, it seemed like the entities that had consumed the galaxy were about to claim their final victory. Captain Roy Parker commanded the Inner Defense Fleet stationed near Mars. His ships were equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had developed, including experimental reality bombs that could erase matter from existence completely. Wait for them to get deeper into the system, Admiral Grant ordered. We need them all inside the kill zone. The Devourer Prime sensed victory and pressed its attack. The combined biomechanical entities moved past Mars, past the asteroid belt, heading directly for Earth itself. Behind them, the outer defenses fell silent, apparently overwhelmed. It was exactly what Admiral Grant had planned. Now, she commanded, activate the Soul Grid. What happened next redefined what the galaxy thought was possible. The entire solar system revealed itself to be single integrated weapon. Every planet, every moon, every piece of space debris had been modified over the past months. They all activated simultaneously. The sun itself pulsed with artificial energy as solar collectors redirected its output into focused beams. Jupiter became a massive gravitational weapon, pulling the biomechanical entities off course and into predetermined kill zones. Saturn's rings transformed into millions of projectile launchers, each one firing quantum disruption rounds. Even Earth participated in the battle. The planet's magnetic field became a weapon, channeling energy from the solar collectors into beams that could reach across the system. The moon opened up to reveal weapons that had been built into its core, firing continuously at the trapped entities. Captain Don Foster watched from his monitoring station as the Devourer Prime realized it had been led into a trap. The massive entity tried to retreat, but the fold space interdictors held it in normal space. Around it, The smaller entities were being systematically destroyed by weapons that came from every direction at once. The Prime is trying to send a distress signal, his communications officer reported. Some kind of quantum transmission toward extragalactic space. Jam it, Admiral Grant ordered. Nothing leaves this system. No signals, no entities, no information. The battle lasted 3 full days. When it finally ended, space around Sol was empty except for scattered atoms that had once been biomechanical entities. The Devourer Prime had taken the longest to die, its massive form fighting against dissolution until the very end dot as the last traces of the invasion force faded away. Admiral Grant allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The threat that had consumed half the galaxy was finally ended. But the cost had been everything they once believed about their place in the universe, that Captain Emma Clark's pursuit fleets spread out across nearby systems, hunting down any entities that might have escaped earlier battles. They found a few scattered survivors and eliminated them with systematic efficiency. The galaxy was safe, but it was no longer the same galaxy that had rejected Earth's warnings. Now it belonged to humanity, whether the surviving alien civilizations wanted to admit it or not. Admiral Grant opened a communication channel to the entire galaxy. This is Admiral Lisa Grant of the Terran Federation. The biomechanical threat has been eliminated. Any remaining entities will be hunted down and destroyed. The galaxy is now under human protection. She paused, looking out at the stars that now belong to her species. We tried to save you through cooperation. You chose rejection. We tried to warn you through diplomacy. You chose mockery. Now you will live under our protection, by our rules, for as long as we decide you deserve to survive. The message reached every functioning communication system in the galaxy. In refugee camps and hidden colonies, on fortress worlds, and in deep space stations, the surviving civilizations heard humanity's declaration of absolute victory. The species that had been dismissed as primitive newcomers had become the undisputed rulers of known space. And they had done it by 6 months after the destruction of the Devourer Prime. The galaxy looked very different. President Janet Mitchell stood in her office in the new Terran Colonial Administration building on Luna, looking out at a view that now represented the center of galactic power. Earth had become more than humanity's homeworld. It was now the capital of known space. Secretary of Defense Kevin Mitchell walked into the office carrying the daily reports. The relationship between the president and her defense secretary was purely professional, despite sharing the same last name. Both had earned their positions through competence during the crisis. The Zephyrian resistance is over, Kevin reported. Captain Tony Lee's patrol squadron eliminated their last fleet yesterday. Total engagement time was 17 minutes. Janet nodded without surprise. The remnants of Chancellor Vic Scala's government had tried to retake their former core worlds, now part of the Human Protection Zone. They had believed their knowledge of the local systems would give them an advantage. They had been wrong. What? About compliance in the outer territories? She asked. The Velthian Republic has formally acknowledged our sovereignty over their former trade routes, Kevin replied. Ambassador Cathara delivered the documents personally. The Crystalline Consortium is requesting permission to establish new computational centers within the protection zone. Janet walked to her desk and activated the three-dimensional map that now dominated the room. The galaxy was divided into clearly marked zones. The inner sphere, colored blue, represented direct human control. This included not just former human colonies, but the most strategic systems from dozens of former alien governments. The outer zones were colored in various shades of yellow and orange, representing different levels of autonomy under human oversight. The red zones were quarantine areas or alien populations that had resisted. Human authority were isolated until they learned to cooperate. Any word from the Outer Rim surveys? Janet asked. Kevin activated a section of the map showing the galaxies. Edge. Captain Emma Clark's long-range patrols have confirmed it. Every system the Devourers consumed is completely empty. Just empty space and radiation signatures. We estimate the total population loss at over 2 trillion beings. The number was staggering, but Janet felt no guilt. Those beings had died because their governments had rejected Earth's warnings. Humanity had tried to save them through cooperation and been dismissed as primitive. Fear-mongers. Ambassador Marcus Cole entered the office, looking older than his years. The man who had tried to warn the Galactic Empire was now Secretary of Galactic Affairs, responsible for managing what remained of alien civilization. The morning briefings are ready, Marcus said. We have 17 asylum requests from former Imperial officials, 43 trade applications from surviving commercial groups, and over 300 requests for basic humanitarian aid. Standard processing, Janet replied. Full background checks, loyalty verification, and acceptance of human authority over their previous territorial claims. Marcus nodded and made notes on his tablet. The asylum process was thorough and often humiliating for former galactic leaders. Chancellor Vexkala himself had spent 3 months in processing before being granted refugee status on a minor agricultural world under constant human supervision. On the flagship Terra Invicta, Admiral Lisa Grant reviewed the deployment orders for the expanding human fleet. The shipyards of Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies worked continuously now, producing vessels with capabilities that the old galaxy had never imagined. Captain John Rodriguez, now promoted to Commodore, entered the bridge carrying the weekly patrol reports. The Terra Nova veteran had been given command of the first exploration fleet, tasked with claiming systems beyond the former galactic borders. Sir, the 20th Squadron reports successful establishment of monitoring stations in the outer spiral, John reported. No signs of additional extragalactic threats, but we're maintaining constant surveillance. Admiral Grant studied the deployment. Map. Human ships now patrolled territory that had never been explored by the old galactic civilizations. The defense grid that had once protected only Sol System now extended across thousands of light years. What about recruitment from the alien populations? She asked. Slow but steady, John replied. The younger generations are more willing to serve under human command. We have several mixed crews performing well in the outer patrols. This was part of humanity's long-term strategy. Rather than simply ruling over alien populations, they were gradually integrating willing individuals into human society. Those who proved loyal could earn privileges and responsibilities. Those who resisted found themselves increasingly isolated. Dr. Helen Murphy had been promoted to Director of Galactic Research. Her laboratories on Luna now studied not just human technology, but also the remnants of alien science. The goal was to understand and surpass every achievement of the old galactic civilizations. We've made significant progress with crystalline computational methods, she reported to the weekly science briefing. Combined with our quantum manipulation techniques, we should be able to develop faster-than-light communications within the next 5 years. This would revolutionize human control of the galaxy. Instead of depending on courier ships for long-distance communication, human commanders would be able to coordinate activities across thousands of light years in real time. Captain Julie Ross commanded the border patrol fleet that maintained the boundaries between human space and the autonomous zones. Her job was to ensure that alien populations stayed within their assigned territories, while preventing any unauthorized development of military technology. Patrol report from the Corathian zone, her communications officer announced. There, requesting permission to rebuild their mining operations on Korath 7. Julie consulted her orders. Korath 7 was the world Captain Nancy Price had watched being consumed by the Devourers. The planet was now a lifeless rock, but it still contained valuable resources. Denied, she replied. Korath 7 is within the protection zone. All mining operations require direct human oversight. This was typical of the new galactic order. Alien populations could request permission to resume various activities, but final authority always rested with human administrators. The species that had once ruled their own empires now lived at humanity's pleasure. On Earth, construction continued on the memorial to the ignored warning. President Mitchell had ordered the monument built near the former United Nations building in New York. It would list every world that had been consumed by the Devourers, along with the date of humanity's rejected warning. The inscription was simple. They were offered salvation and chose pride. They were given truth and chose mockery. They received the consequences of their decision. Captain Tony Lee's patrol squadron maintained order in the former Imperial sectors. His ships, equipped with dimensional weapons and reality-altering technology, were more powerful than anything the old Empire had possessed. When alien populations saw human patrols, they were reminded daily of who now ruled their lives. Distress. Signal from the Zerion colony, his sensor operator reported. They're reporting equipment failures in their life support systems. Tony reviewed the colony's file. Zerion had been a minor Imperial outpost that had initially refused to acknowledge human authority. They had been placed under economic restrictions. Until they complied, send a maintenance team, he ordered. Full inspection of their systems, and remind them that regular maintenance requires ongoing cooperation with human administration. This was how the new galaxy worked. Alien populations could survive and even prosper, but only under human protection and by human rules. Those who remembered the old days of galactic independence learned to keep their memories private. The final scene took place aboard the Terra Invisha, where Admiral Grant met with her senior staff for the annual strategic review. The holographic display showed human territory, covering nearly half the galaxy, with the remainder divided into managed zones and exploration sectors. Population estimates? She asked. Human population has reached 15 billion across all colonies. Captain Rodriguez reported. Alien populations under our protection total approximately 400 billion, down from pre-invasion estimates of 2.7 trillion. The numbers told the story of the new galactic order. Humanity had grown from a minor species dismissed by galactic powers to the undisputed rulers of known space. The alien civilizations that had rejected their warnings now existed only because humanity permitted it. Any signs of resistance movements? Admiral Grant asked. Isolated incidents only, Security Chief Carl Murphy replied. Nothing that local patrol squadrons can't handle. Most alien populations have accepted the reality of human authority. Admiral Grant nodded and walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent walls, she could see the lights of human ships patrolling space that had once belonged to proud alien empires. The galaxy that had laughed at Earth's warnings now lived under the protection of human weapons. She thought back to that day on Zentara Prime when Ambassador Cole had tried to warn the Galactic Empire. The alien delegates had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers who saw monsters in shadows. Now those same aliens lived in the shadow of human power. Protected by the species they had once mocked, the galaxy was safe and